Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic, Spring in Tigerland, a season of transformation. Presented by NatHab Expedition Leader Aditya Panda. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you for being here with us today. Take it away, Aditya.
Thank you, Rob, and hello to our wonderful audience. It's been a while since I last presented a Daily Dose of Nature webinar, but we here in India are right in the middle of our safari season, and I've been guiding trips back to back and been keeping very busy. And whatever time I find between trips, I try and come here on Daily Dose of Nature. Um, for those of you who haven't watched one of my webinars in the past, and for those of you who haven't traveled with me, my name is Aditya Panda, and I have been leading NatHab expeditions since 2016. Um, I lead what we call our tiger trips, the Grand India Wildlife Adventure, India Tiger Quest, and the India Tiger Photo Expedition. I'm based in Eastern India, and when I'm not leading NatHab expeditions, I keep myself busy, involved in conservation activities that are directed at the revival of tiger and elephant landscapes in this part of India. So it's now March, and the days are getting warmer, the nights less cold, and the harbinger of spring in India is a festival called Holi. A lot of you might have heard of it, known of it, and I know there are a lot of people of Indian origin who live in America, so you might actually have seen or even participated in this really, really fun festival of colors. And that sort of truly describes spring here in India, color. Um, I get a lot of questions from all of you and from my guests who travel with me on expeditions, uh, asking me which is the best time of the year to travel on a tiger expedition. And I always say that each season, each period of the year has its own positives and negatives and its own unique attributes, and each of them therefore is a fantastic time to be in Tigerland. But now that we are in March, and now that I'm actually watching the transformation of season from winter to summer, and now we are enjoying um, the spring season here in India, my mind was full of thoughts of what goes on in spring in the Indian forests, and that's why I thought I might as well talk to you all today about spring in Tigerland. Now, as most of you know, these are the tiger destinations that we at NatHab travel here in India. Ranthambore Tiger Reserve in northwestern India, Bandhavgarh and Kanha Tiger Reserves in central India, and the Kaziranga Tiger Reserve in northeastern or far east India. And my talk on spring and the changes that it brings to Tigerland will be based on what we get to see in these tiger reserves in this part of the country. It might or might not be the same things happening in other parts of the country, because India is a very large country with very diverse climatic regions, and different things happen at different parts of the country at the same time of the year. So when the in India we have a rainy season right in the middle of the year known as the monsoons, which goes on from roughly about June till roughly about October. And it is in October when all our, or the majority of our tiger reserves open up for tourism. From June through October, the parks usually remain shut because it's just raining too much and the roads can become rather impassable, and therefore it's not safe or a good time to be on safari, and that's why the park managements shut the parks for those few months. And everybody in India spends the long off season just waiting for October to arrive and the parks to reopen. When the parks reopen, it's usually autumn and getting into winter, and that time of the year has its own sort of special feel: mist and cold weather and frost and beautiful light and tigers in winter coat, thick winter coat, you know, several kinds of animals, in their rich winter coat, migratory birds, and it has its own thing going. But the appearance of the landscape is still lush and green from the monsoons that have just a few months ago gone. And as we approach February and then March, things begin to change. You begin to see transformation. And one of the first signs of the arrival of spring in India's forests are the mango flowers. The mango trees, which are not really a very widespread variety of tree in nature. You usually find them along streams and rivers because they are a riparian or a riverine species of tree. And you also find them around human settlements or in some open grasslands. And these mango trees, when they begin to flower, when the buds begin to arrive, then you can most definitely feel a change in temperature, feel a change in weather. The frosty cold of December and January begins to lessen, and the mango blooms are the first sign of the arrival of spring and the departure of winter. Of course, by now, in the warmer regions of India, the mango flowers have already started turning into fruit, and you have tiny little, really cute and really sour mangoes on trees in areas around where I live. But in places such as Kanha, which is what you're watching on your screen right now, which is, Kanha is at an elevation. So, the summer arrives later there. It's usually cooler than here in the plains there. Over there, the mango trees are going to fruit a few weeks later. And it's not just the mango trees that flower. Uh, this beautiful scarlet red flower belongs to a tree called the flame of the forest, or Butea monosperma in Latin. For the rest of the year, barring for spring and early summer, the flame of the forest tree is a rather unremarkable tree. You um, see them usually in drier sort of habitats, in degraded sort of forests, and they have these sort of rather uh, you know they have these round leaves that don't particularly look good, and the tree itself has a rather sort of odd kind of shape. It does not have the grandeur or the beauty that you would typically associate with large trees such as sal or teak or mahua. But come February and March, and these become the most beautiful trees ever. They shed their leaves and burst into these flaming orange red flowers that just absolutely light up the landscape. And these flowers, in fact, have they have a strong relation with the festival of Holi that I was just talking about. The petals of the flame of the forest trees flowers are actually dried in the sun and powdered to be used as colors during the festival of Holi, or that's at least what traditionally they used to be used for. Nowadays, of course, you get dyed talc and other less sustainable and less healthy colors in the market. But the colors of the flame of the forest are not attractive only for humans. Animals and birds find them irresistible too. Here we have a rose-ringed parakeet, a female. The male has a pink and black collar around its neck. This is a female rose-ringed parakeet feeding on the petals of a flame of the forest tree. And it's not just rose-ringed parakeets. A lot of other birds will come and flock to these trees to feed not only on the petals but also the nectar of these flowers. And of course, later in summer, the the tree sheds its flowers, and it begins to fruit and seed, and the fruit is sort of a bean-like pod that you see on your screen with a single seed in it. The flame of the forest tree is not the only scarlet red tree that comes into bloom. There is another tree that is quite widespread across India's tiger habitats, and that is called the red silk cotton. The red silk cotton tree also attracts a lot of birds because, the like the flame of the forest tree, the red silk cotton also sheds its leaves and goes into beautiful red blooms, flowers full of nectar, attracting birds like this chloropsis or leaf bird that you see here on your screen. Um, and later, as the season progresses, the red silk cotton tree will also grow pods, seed pods, that actually have fluffs of cotton that the tree grows surrounding the seeds. And as the pods ripen and dry up, they will burst open, and the seeds will then float with the cotton, and spread far and wide. The silk, or the well, it's a very silky cotton, which is why I guess it's called silk cotton. So the silk or the cotton, whatever you choose to call it, of the red silk cotton tree is quite popular and has traditionally been very popular for making pillows and mattresses. It's really soft and really nice. And it's not just the birds that come to the red silk cotton tree. The deer and the monkeys also find it rather irresistible. Here you have a herd of spotted deer grazing under the red silk cotton tree, and they will pick up whatever petals and flowers might have dropped naturally from the tree. But when they have finished up all the flowers that have fallen on their own, they will wait for monkeys to actually, monkeys like the grey langur monkey, which is quite common in our forests. They'll wait for them to come and start feeding on the trees, and the deer will just wait down below, hoping for picking up whatever the monkeys drop. But what really adds to the uh, feel of spring in India's Sal forests, especially in places like Kanha and Bandhavgarh, is actually the rather delicate but very woody smell of the sal tree coming into bloom. Sal flowers are very small. You see them in sort of bunches, and the entire forest gets this beautiful aroma of sal flowers for just a few weeks every year. And to be in the sal forest during that time of the year is absolutely magical. Um, Sal is the primary tree species in parts of central and northern India, where it's a hardwood tree that grows to be almost 150, 200 feet tall sometimes. And sal trees are very long lived. They can live for more than 200 years easily. And the sal tree like many other trees in the forests of central India and Kaziranga, are a deciduous tree. I know I'm showing you a tiger picture here and talking about the sal tree, but there is a reason why I'm doing that. Unfortunately, YouTube hasn't yet developed the technology where you can also touch and feel and smell things that you're seeing on your screen. But I'm sure with the advent of AI, that is not a long way away. But until then, you will have to just make do with what I tell you and try and come here to India and experience these things on your own. But the reason I'm talking to you about Sal while showing you a picture of a tiger is so that you would notice the tremendous amount of leaf litter that you see all around the tiger on the ground. And, when I look at this picture, I do remember a tiger sighting, but what I remember even more than that is the smell of the sal leaf litter that absolutely pervades the air in the forests of central India at this time of the year. So it's just fantastic being in India's tiger landscapes at this time of the year. It's a visual treat because you have this burst of colors happening, and it's also an olfactory treat because of the mix of so many, the scents of so many flowers and the aroma of leaf litter and also the aroma of the resins of a lot of different hardwood trees. Um, the trees that you see in the background, the ones that are still green, are the sal trees. Um, in the northern hemisphere and in the temperate regions of the northern hemisphere, the cooler regions, North America, Europe, or even in the sub-Himalayan regions of India, fall is usually associated with autumn. Autumn is when your trees begin to shed their leaves and get ready for the winter, and they start growing new leaves, and you see your fall colors. But in the tropical part of the northern hemisphere, in places like India's tiger habitats, fall actually occurs in spring instead of winter, instead of autumn. And there is a very good reason why that happens. A lot of people get surprised as to how we have a spring fall rather than having an autumn fall, which is what most people are used to. Now, trees shed their leaves usually at a time when multiple reasons cause trees to shed their leaves. Um, for starters, they might be just going into flower and then begin fruiting, for which they need to shed their old leaves and grow new ones. And also, they shed their leaves just before entering a pinch season. A pinch season is when the environment might not be very suitable. It might be too cold. For example, in your winter in the temperate parts of the world, and trees usually just want to sort of go into a sort of well, it's not exactly the correct word, but you can sort of equate it to animals going into hibernation to just survive the winter. So similarly, in the temperate parts of the world and the cold parts of the world where it snows a lot and winters can get very heavy, trees will often shed the leaves just before that happens so that they use less resources and just go into a sleep mode or a hibernation mode through that time of the year. Similarly, here in India, in the tropical parts of India, in our tiger country, our summers in April and May, especially those 2 months, can be atrociously hot and very dry. So a lot of trees will just go absolutely leafless at that time of the year just to sort of minimize the loss of water through transpiration at a time of the year when water is short and the air is very dry. Um, so we have a lot of deciduous trees that will just do that. They will shed their leaves and wait for the arrival of the monsoons. But we also have trees that might shed the leaves, go into flower, and start growing new leaves and start fruiting in the peak of summer. But trees like the sal tree actually shed their leaves and grow new leaves simultaneously. So you will be having, the lower, larger, older leaves of the sal tree being shed, and at the same time, at the very top of the tree, you will have brand new leaves coming up, and all of this adds a beautiful flush of color to the forests during spring. And it's not just the color of the red flowers or of the silk cotton, or the red flowers of the flame of the forest, or the yellow flowers of the mango trees. It is also the beautiful colors of the brand new leaves, such as these, almost purple red leaves of the kosum tree. And if you look at banyan trees, for example, with their beautiful um, aerial roots coming into you know, coming into new leaf in absolutely a burst of red. It's just stunning to be in the jungle at that time of the year and experiencing this flush of colors across the landscape in what is otherwise, during the monsoon and winter, a very green landscape, and in the peak of summer, a very sort of brown, drab, yellowish, colorless sort of landscape. Um, that, of course, allows for some tremendous photographic opportunities for those of us who like photographing landscapes, or who just like playing with light, and also like to photograph our animals in interesting light and color conditions. A very interesting tree that really not just comes to life itself, but brings the entire landscape to life at this time of the year, is a tree called the mahua tree. The mahua tree really is one of those trees around which all life, human and animal alike, sort of centers around in central India. Um, you will, as you drive through central India, you will notice, in the rural landscapes of central India, where forest and farmland sort of exist in a mosaic, you will find often that you will have these vast stretches of agriculture and farmland where you know these must have been forest many years ago, before they were cleared, decades ago, before they were cleared for farming. And you will have noticed that the people who 50 years ago or more cleared those forests for farmland, uh, chopped down all the trees except the mahua tree. The mahua tree is truly the spirit of central India, and I mean that in more ways than just figuratively, and I'll tell you why very soon. This here, I have photographed the overhanging branches of a mahua tree just coming into flower, and once the mahua tree comes into flower, it is like a magnet. It draws all animals, towards it. Um, the mahua flower is like a raisin. It's almost like a grape shape, and it is full of sugar. And as the mahua flowers drop, the tree sort of sheds, or the flowers drop all through the night. And from early in the morning, you find deer and monkeys and birds flocking to the tree, trying trying to feed on the flowers. because not only does the flower taste really great because it's so full of sugar, but at this time of the year, when water is beginning to dry out and the days are getting hotter, the animals really can do with that glucose, with that extra glucose in their bloodstream. And it's not just glucose. So I mentioned to you that the flowers shed all night, and they are deposited all around the tree. And in the warm night, the flowers actually begin to ferment. And it is not unusual to find animals actually getting a little, well, let's just be polite and say a little high around a mahua tree, especially later in the day. You will have spotted deer giving false alarm calls and confusing us, safari guides and drivers. You will even have sloth bears coming and feeding on too much fermented mahua flower and absolutely being unable to move. Sometimes they're so drunk. So it's a uh, it's a magnet really for animals and people alike. In the mahua season, you will have every man, woman, and child of all ages gathering under mahua trees from first light and all day, just picking up mahua flowers and collecting them. These flowers are used, for various reasons. They the primary and most well-known use of the mahua flower is for a very nicely distilled liquor called mahua, of course, which is a very smooth and has a very unique flavor as a drink, and is quite popular not only among people living in these landscapes, the indigenous communities that live in these landscapes, but also it's becoming increasingly popular in its bottled version, which are quite popular for as a cocktail base. So the mahua flowers are gathered in a basket, and they are distilled in a pot that is sort of heated over a wood fire. And of course, the mahua during the mahua season, which is during the months of March and April, of course, is the best quality mahua because that's made out of fresh mahua. But people in these regions ensure that they have enough mahua to last them the entire year. And the way they do that is by sun drying the mahua flowers and turning them into raisins, which can then be stored all year round and be used to distill the mahua liquor as many times as people would want to. The mahua flower is not only used to distill a liquor, it's also used as a sweetener in food. It is used in various recipes as a sweetener, and because of its nice pulpy sort of texture, it is also used as cattle feed. The mahua liquor, for those of you who might be curious, does not last very long. So it's not a form of alcohol that you can bottle and age through the year. It's something that needs to be consumed within 2 weeks of it being distilled, otherwise it spoils. This time of the year is a time of the year when a lot of the wintering waterfowl and the winter migrant birds that absolutely stuff India's tiger landscapes during the winter, they leave at this time of the year, which obviously means that you don't see as many species of birds as you would see in winter. But of the resident birds, you get the best viewing at this time of the year. You can just park under any silk cotton tree or under any flame of the forest tree, and just watch with your binoculars or shoot with your camera, and you'll have all kinds of birds coming to those trees, getting drawn to them, and feeding on the nectar. And in doing that, those birds are also cross-pollinating a lot of the trees, because a bird that feeds on the flowers on one tree will carry the pollen on its face, and head, and then go, put his head into another tree's flowers and end up pollinating it. This here is a Himalayan red-breasted parakeet that you see in Kaziranga Tiger Reserve. They don't exist in central India. They exist only along the foothills of the Himalaya and east into Assam and Kaziranga and that region. They're a very, very pretty, very, very good looking bird. Um, this time of the year is also when a lot of rutting activity begins for our spotted deer, which happen to be the most common and the most widespread prey species in tiger habitat. Most of the other deer, the sambar deer, for example, and the Barasinga or swamp deer, are at the end of their rutting period at this time of the year. But the spotted deer tend to enter their rut in the spring, and that sort of peaks in the summer. So you have all these stags with beautiful antlers, new antlers that they've grown for the rutting season to see at this time of the year. If you go earlier than spring, then the spotted deer usually either do not have antlers, or if they have antlers, they're still growing and in velvet. But once you arrive here in spring and in the summer, you can actually see their antlers in all their glory. And the rutting call of the spotted deer is one of those classic sounds of spring and summer in the Indian forest. And not only do the deer enter rut at this time of the year, a lot of the fawns, newly born fawns, are born between January and February. So you start see them moving around with their mothers at this time of the year quite a lot. And of course, where there are deer, there will be tigers. And the spotted deer, because they get into the rut at this time of the year, especially the stags, they're quite unmindful of what is going on around. And not only are they unmindful because they are in a rut and trying to proclaim their dominance against all the other stags and trying to impress the harems they have created with the hinds that they have gathered, they might actually also be a little high on mahua. So it's a great time for tigers to easily be able to ambush spotted deer at this time of the year. This picture was taken in Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve in the spring of last year, and I absolutely love the color of this tigress that you see here in the foreground. Absolutely deep, dark rust red. It's not a color that we get to see very often these days. Most tigers are, a paler shade of orange or yellow, but to see a tiger with this dark rust red color is always such a treat. So tigers are on the prowl at this time of the year, not only because hunting becomes slightly easier with the spotted deer being so unmindful of everything, but also because this is also the end towards the or immediately after the peak in the tiger mating season, which usually happens around, tigers can mate round the year, but there seems to be a peak in courting and mating activity around December and January that sort of fades out towards spring. But also, a lot of tiger movement begins to get restricted as summer arrives because it's just too hot for them and they localize around water. Winter is when they move the most. Um, but in the spring, tigers are still out and about, and with the vegetation improving, sightings become easier. And not only do tiger sightings become easier, the sightings of many animals that live in thick vegetation, such as these western hulock gibbons, becomes easier, because not only is the foliage less, but also a lot of trees, as I said, are in flower, and a lot of trees are in fruit. So, the animals like the gibbons become so busy eating that they offer excellent sightings, especially with the foliage being so helpfully sparse. Uh, this time of the year is great for tiger sightings, as I was saying, because of the sparse vegetation. But if tigresses happen to have young cubs or newly born cubs at this time of the year, um, which they often do, unless a tigress is with last year cubs, like this tigress on your screen. um, she will most likely be absolutely elusive and not want to come out at this time of the year. As I was mentioning, most tiger mating happens between December and January, and tigers have a 3-month gestation period, which means that at this time of the year, all the tigresses that have mated and conceived in December or January, they have either just had cubs or are just about to have cubs. And that means that those particular tigresses will not be very active. They will not be very visible. They will usually want to find a safe denning site and retreat to it. And they will just leave their cubs for very short periods to go and do the barest minimum hunting. But at this time of the year, tigresses with newborn cubs are so possessive of their new babies that they're not likely to be out and about and be seen. But tigresses that have had cubs last year will now have cubs that are about a year old. And that would mean that those tigresses are very likely to be seen with their cubs when they go out hunting. And, cubs at that age, at the age of about 1 year, are increasingly going out with their mothers, increasingly going out and learning how to hunt. So, in areas where tigresses have had cubs the previous year, spring is a great time to start seeing those cubs being more and more active with their mothers. Spring is also the time of the year when water begins to dry out and shrink. That allows us to get beautiful landscape views of nalas and streams and rivers. But it also uh, draws animals towards the water. As water becomes more and more limited, animals get concentrated more and more around it. And tigers, like um, well, unlike most other cats and most other big cats, barring the jaguar, tigers actually love water, and tigers don't have a great tolerance for heat. So, as spring arrives and the days begin to warm up, tigers, increasingly in the middle of the day, will begin to seek out water in which to just sit down and cool off for hours and hours. So, as water begins to shrink and dry out, all kinds of animals, including tigers and animals like gore, they begin to concentrate more and more around water. In the winter season and the rainy season, the gore will usually be in the hilly parts of the forests and in dense vegetation. So you don't get, unless if a gore is out in the open, it's difficult to get good viewing. But come spring and gore start congregating near water as well. The Gaur, by the way, are the world's largest wild cattle, for those of you who don't know. But not everything is beautiful and colorful and great during the spring season. Um, Spring is also the time of the year when we start having really bad forest fires in many parts of India. These are not the kind of forest fires that you are more used to in the coniferous part of the world. These are not canopy fires that burn houses and do things like that. These are primarily ground fires. Um, as I was mentioning, spring is the fall season here in India, in tropical India, and that means that the forest floor is covered with layers and layers and layers of tinder dry leaf litter. And to make matters worse, the days are getting warmer and drier. And we do not have natural forest fires here in India, in tropical India, because lightning is almost invariably always followed by rain. Most of the forest fires in tropical India, or most of the forest fires in tiger landscapes, are actually man-made and man-created. They could be accidental in that somebody just carelessly throws a burning cigarette butt into the leaf litter, and that will just instantly catch fire, and that these ground fires spread really quickly. But also, sometimes people will deliberately light fire to the forest. There are two main reasons why they do this. Uh, the number one reason is to burn away the leaf litter so that they can easily pick things such as mahua. Burning up the leaf litter will burn insects and clear up the forest floor. So the mahua that falls through the night will be less damaged in the morning when they pick it up. Um, they will also do this to gather the leaves of a tree called the tendu, which are used to make these leaf-rolled cigarettes that are quite popular in India. They're known as bidis, where the tobacco is wrapped in the tendu leaf instead of being wrapped in paper. Um, and then another reason why people might light fire to the forest is plain vandalism or just to score points with the wildlife department. So, say someone who goes out poaching deer or hare or things like that for bushmeat um, might just want to settle scores with the wildlife department because they were caught sometime and just light fire to the forest. So we have a lot of issues with forest fires in spring and summer, and it takes an enormous amount of effort and manpower to douse these fires, to prevent these fires, and also in carrying out controlled burns and the creation of fire breaks to make these fires less damaging. But inside protected areas, inside the core areas of tiger reserves, which are uninhabited, forest fires are less of a threat. But an even darker side of spring is this: it is that the seasons themselves uh, seem to be endangered. It's not just the wildlife that is endangered by things like forest fire. Before I go into the seasons being endangered, I want to say a few more words on forest fires. These forest fires are tremendously damaging. They burn away the understory of the forest. They do damage the trees a bit. The trees themselves don't catch fire entirely because they are so full of water, but the bark and the lower levels get burnt. Ground nesting and ground dwelling birds and animals and reptiles and things like that, they suffer tremendous damage. The natural understory of the forest, which is grass and shrubs and herbs, those get burnt out and completely damaged. And you know, hardy, fire-resistant, invasive species such as lantana then get an advantage over the natural vegetation, the indigenous vegetation of that landscape, and take over the forest. Also, saplings get burnt out, preventing the regeneration of the forest. But, you know, um, as I was saying, it's not just the wildlife, the seasons themselves seem to be endangered. As I present you this webinar, uh, this is what the almost the second, it's just into the second week of March now. And this February of 2025, has been the hottest February on record here in India. Climate change is really, really threatening the rhythm of the seasons. It is threatening the subtleties of spring and autumn. These seasons are transit periods between longer and bigger seasons, but these periods of transition are also periods of very subtle climatic conditions, which are very important for so many natural processes to occur. And gradually, we are losing these subtle seasons and just ending up in extremes of heat and cold and rain and storm. And the data is all there for us to see. Forget the data and the graphs. We are seeing this in front of our eyes happening here in this country and this part of the world. And it's the same case in so many other parts of the world. With climate change and unusual heating happening, um, we are getting longer and earlier summers, and shorter and drier winters, and a lot of unusual unseasonal rain and things like that. And the ecological consequences of this are quite bad. We just spoke about so many of the delicate processes of nature that happen, from how uniquely, how carefully trees time the time of the year when they will shed their leaves, and how they time their flowering and fruiting so carefully, and how animals and birds play such an important role in ensuring those processes happen and in dispersing seeds and fruit. Um, to how the breeding and coating of animals and birds is also timed with the seasons. We spoke about migration of birds, winter migrant birds that go back at this time of the year. All of these things get negatively affected by the shortening spring and lengthening summers. And if things go on as they are going, we will eventually have really just a short cold season and a very long unusually hot season. There will be the delicate balance of spring and autumn are beginning to vanish, and that is something that we should all be very concerned about. um, Migratory species such as, say, a little stint, for example, which is a little wading bird. It flies. There are various species of stint, but take any Palearctic uh, migrant stint, for example. They come in from Central Asia and Europe into India to winter, and they must make a very, very long flight to get here. And to do that, they have to have a certain amount of fat in them to last them through that flight. And that amount of fat, the amount of fat that they carry in them has to be very carefully calculated. It's not just that the bird fattens itself up there and just flies down here, because if it is carrying too much fat, then it ends up burning too much energy carrying all that weight, and will not make it here. And then, you know, if it has too little fat, then it will not have enough fuel to make it here. So migratory birds have to have as careful fuel calculations as any intercontinental aircraft. And to do that, they depend on the amount of forage that is available both at the site where they winter as well as the site where they spend the summer months breeding. So, you know, with all of that happening and the winters getting shorter and the birds needing to, the winter migrant birds needing to fly back sooner, they're not being able to manage these very delicate, careful calculations that go into such long journeys, into gathering the right amount of fat to make those journeys. So it is playing absolute havoc with animal migration. And of course, it is also changing, climate change is also changing the moisture regimen in the forest and increasing the chances of forest fire and the spread of invasive species. And of course, for people who live in these landscapes, whose livelihoods depend on things such as a timely monsoon and the timely flowering of the mahua tree, and the processes, the cycles of nature, for them it is a direct loss of livelihood. But uh, you know uh, it is ultimately places like these, the conservation of places like India's Tigerland, like India's tiger habitat, the conservation and expansion of these natural landscapes, that will ultimately be the only way we can combat things like climate change and get the natural processes of our planet back into their natural rhythm. So, for those of you who are planning to visit places like these during the springtime, these are some of the highlights of the season that you need to keep in mind. Um, the it's a very pleasant time of the year to be out and about. The days are warmer, but the nights are still pleasantly cool, and it is still very nice and nippy when you go out in the morning. You don't have to layer up in multiple layers like you did in winter, but in just one layer of fleece that you will later peel off, you will feel really nice at this time of the year on safari. Uh, Tiger sightings and big cat sightings in general begin to get better as the vegetation sort of begins to get sparser. And at spring, I find spring to be the best balance between summer and winter in India from a safari perspective. The sightings begin to get as nice as they are in summer, but the light and the morning mist are still as beautiful as they used to be in winter. So it's a great time of the year to, especially for photographers, to play with light and to capture the stunning colors and changing colors of the landscape, beautifully. And especially if you can get an animal or a bird with those colors in your frame, there's nothing quite like it. It is also a time when a lot of birds and animals go into courting and breeding behavior. So there's always fantastic things to watch while on safari during this time of the year. And I absolutely can't wait to be on my next trip, which in fact begins 2 days from now. So yeah, that was just a glimpse of spring in Tigerland for all of you. And if you have any questions, I would love to answer.
Thank you so much, Aditya. Now, before we dive into the question and answer session, I would like to remind everyone that you can submit your questions via the question field in your control panel. Just go to the top right corner and you see those three lines. Click on that, and you can find the question field in there. So let's dive into some of these questions. Um, so, um, do we know how long tiger cubs stay with their mothers?
Yeah, they usually stay with their mothers for anywhere between 2 to 2.5 years, Rob. Sometimes, if it is male cubs, they will try and latch on for a little longer. but young tigresses, female cubs, will usually leave their mothers between the ages of 2 to 2.5.
Great, thank you. So now, what is the main predator of a tiger cub? What do they need to be worried about?
Well, a lot of things could kill them. Pythons, when they're really young, for example, when the cubs are blind and can't move in the first 10 or 15 days of their lives, they could easily be taken by pythons. Scavengers like jackals and sometimes even leopards will try and kill them. But the greatest threat yeah, a tiger cub faces is actually an invading male tiger. If another male tiger takes over the territory of their father and drives their father out, an invading male tiger will actually find and kill the cubs.
Okay, great. Thank you for letting us know. Um, can you explain to us what the den of a tiger would look like?
Well, it could be anything. I mean, it could be just a small sort of cave under a rock, or it could be behind a large fallen tree. It could be just any corner where a tigress can safely leave her cubs and go away for short periods to hunt. It just has to be somewhere that is well hidden and somewhere which is not likely to flood. And yeah, it's just it's tigresses will just find any safe corner and keep their cubs there, and not just any one corner. They will actually also frequently move their cubs. So there might be multiple locations where they'll do that. Some might just be under a rock, some might be in a cave, some might be in just dense vegetation somewhere. So there's no one description of a tiger's den.
So, would you say that they don't dig a den? They more find a place?
No, they don't dig. They don't dig a den.
Great, thank you for that. So, let me ask you about do the red silk and flame trees, do they give off a sweet aroma, or is it just the color that attracts animals?
Well, you get an aroma from those trees if you're really close and if you actually really smell a flower, but they don't give the kind of aroma that, say, a sal tree or a mahua tree will give, where the moment you enter the forest, you can just smell it in the air. But I think it's just the color that the animals find so irresistible, and trees will go a long way, trying to make themselves attractive to animals and birds, especially in the flowering and fruiting season, because that's how trees and plants disperse. So it's an evolutionary tactic to attract birds to them.
Gotcha, thank you. So, the mawa, you said it was used as cattle feed. Does
Right.
does it inebriate the cattle?
No, the mahua is used as cattle feed only as the dried up raisins. So it's not used as a primary feed. It's just sort of used as a supplement. So once it's dried up, it turns into like literally like raisins. So unless you actively go and ferment it, it will not ferment. But if it is lying fresh on the ground in warm conditions, the juice can cause it to ferment. The juice and the sugar can cause it to ferment, but without the water content in the flowers, the fermentation process just ceases.
Gotcha. Thank you so
It would
much.
be fun to watch drunk cattle, though.
That would be interesting, wouldn't it? So, do the tree flowers, do they attract hummingbirds at all?
We don't have hummingbirds in the old world. They're found only in the Americas. But we have a bird that have sort of are an example of parallel evolution. We have sunbirds, and sunbirds, unlike hummingbirds, which hummingbirds have a straight bill, sunbirds have a curved bill, and they can't hover for as long as hummingbirds do. But we do have sunbirds also flocking to these trees. Yes.
Gotcha. Thank you. So let's talk about the trip for a moment. How many
Sure.
people? How many people will be on my trip with me?
Oh, well, that depends on which trip you're going on. If it's the Grand India Wildlife Adventure, which is a longer trip of about 13 to 15 days, depending on whether or not you're going to Agra on an extension to see the Taj Mahal. If it's a Grand India expedition, then you will have 11 people in the group. That's the largest group size we do. But if you're going on India Tiger Quest and the India Tiger Photo Expedition, it's only going to be 6 people in the entire group.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying that. And in general, can you talk about what latitude and what elevation the trips are at? Are we going to be doing a lot of walking up?
No, so like any classic safari, um, on these trips, our primary activity is going on game drives. So it's primarily uh, Jeep based exploring that we'll do, which is well and good because we are going to be in the habitats of rather large and rather potentially dangerous animals such as tigers and elephants and rhinos. It's they're not physically very active trips in that sense. We do manage to squeeze in a couple of walking safaris, and that sort of thing once in a while. But those are easy hikes. But primarily our activities are jeep based, and sometimes we go on both safaris as well. The latitudes are just around, say for example, Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve, which I was showing on the map. That is almost exactly on the Tropic of Cancer. So it's the tropical part of India, warm climate primarily, and the altitude isn't all that much. In central India, you are on average at about 3,000 feet above sea level, which is just pleasantly high, that high enough that you escape the heat of the plains. Um, but no, I mean, in terms of in terms of altitude and physical activity, these trips are quite easy.
Gotcha. Thank you. So, do we know how many tigers are estimated to be in each of the reserves?
Yes, we do. India as a whole has about 3,600 tigers at the moment, and Bandhavgarh and Kanha tiger reserves each have anywhere between 120 to 150 tigers or more. I'm talking about 4-year-old figures, 3-year-old figures. Um, Ranthambore Tiger Reserve has about 80 tigers, and Kaziranga National Park again has about 120 tigers or so.
Would those numbers be consider a healthy population?
Oh yes, these reserves are all at rather optimum levels when it comes to their tiger populations and tiger densities. So going by the size of these reserves, those are really healthy populations for each of them.
Great. Thank you so much, Aditya. Unfortunately, that is going to be the last question that we do have time for today. So I'd like to throw it back to you for any closing comments you may have for us today.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you to our wonderful audience. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. But trust me, if you want to experience spring in Tigerland, a safari, an expedition is a far better way of doing it than listening to a webinar. So please try and visit India, come to Tigerland. Your visit is not only going to change your life in the experiences that Tigerland gives you, but it is also directly going to contribute to the conservation of these landscapes. And of course, if you need any information on our tiger trips, there's the contact information at the bottom of your screen. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed this webinar, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Aditya, thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And I'd also like to thank everyone who joined us today. So if you are interested in information on how you could travel with NatHab to see tigers, give us a call at the number on your screen, or you could send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. And if you're part of a photo club and would like NatHab to speak to your members about nature and travel photography, email us at webinars@nathab.com. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.